The Lord of the Rings. That is our new goal on the Beyond the Screenplay Patreon. Once we pass 500 patrons, we'll do a 3-part series on the Lord of the Rings trilogy that will culminate in a special, uninhibited Patreon exclusive episode on the Hobbit trilogy. It's been several years since I've rewatched the Lord of the Rings films, and I'm pretty excited to revisit them and see how they hold up. So if you want to help us reach this goal and get to talking about Lord of the Rings as soon as possible, head to the Beyond the Screenplay Patreon to become a patron. The link is in the show notes. But for now, let's jump into our episode on Logan. Hi, I'm Michael, and welcome to Beyond the Screenplay. Today we are talking about Logan, the 2017 film written by James Mangold, Scott Frank, and Michael Green, directed by James Mangold. I am here with the Lessons from Screenplay team, writer Trisha Arand.
Hello, everybody.
Writer Brian Bittner.
Hey, bub.
And editor Alex Calleros.
Hi.
So we're talking about Logan because in the previous episode we talked about Children of Men, and one of the videos we made for Lessons from the Screenplay was comparing the first act of Children of Men to the first act of Logan. And that video came about because people had been talking about Logan a lot and saying you should do a video about Logan, and I was kind of resistant, like an R-rated super, like I've never been super into X-Men, and like Wolverine's cool, but like I wasn't exactly pumped to go see an R-rated Wolverine movie, and a lot of the Wolverine stories have been bad in movies and stuff, but people kept saying it was amazing, and so I finally sat down and watched it one night, and I was like moved to tears at point. Like It was just so good. I was like so surprised and thrilled and just really, really enjoyed it. And I happened to be reading this book at the time, which I kind of talked about in the Children of Men episode, about creating character arcs and how to design the first act of your story, and kind of looking at Logan and even rewatching it recently. I feel like the first act of this movie is so good. I think it's my favorite part of the movie.
I agree. Yeah, watching it again, it was one of those, we talked about in Children of Men, how that movie from start to finish feels perfect. Yeah. This movie does hit some hiccups for me, but the first act feels kind of perfect. I was watching it again this week and realizing, I wouldn't change anything about this. This is hitting all the right notes. It's really getting stressful now because everything's adding up to this incredible like showdown at the what do you call the place they're staying at?
Smelting plant.
Abandoned smelting plant.
Just everything. Everything is set up so well to break out of that first act with so much momentum and so many stakes. It's just really well done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked about how Children of Men gets it all done in about an hour and 50 minutes, and Logan, or Children of X-Men, it's 2 hours and 20 some minutes or something like that. And I just think, like, the first time I saw the movie I loved it, and the second 2 times I'm like, it's a little long and maybe you could snip a little, but other than that I just think it's great.
It really could be called Children of X-Men because it is about that.
It's a lot of similarities there.
There's no new mutants. There's no new children. Like,
right. Yeah.
I mean, and I like how it's, I think in the last third of the video, Michael, or like maybe even in the wrap up part, you're comparing them throughout, but especially focusing on the first act. But then when you really get down into like the different beats of like, and then their person who's protecting them dies, and so this person has to take over, and then you like really start to chart how similar they are in some ways. It's really obvious. But obviously, like, I don't know if I would call Children of Men an action movie. So like when you really boil down the plot and you like put it into a premise sentence, which you do in the video, but like, it's not an action movie. It's this sort of like difficult war drama almost. Children of Men is. And Logan is just action, straight and pure and very violent from start to finish.
And a really, one thing I thought over and over again watching it again is just how much they embraced the hard R rating.
Oh,
They're like, we are going to use this R rating as much as we can. Like, let's have some decapitations.
So many.
Everybody's going to say, drop F-bombs like as much as possible. Like, let's just do it. And I really appreciate that because it's almost really cathartic to get to see these characters that have been in the necessarily slightly more sanitized, in incarnations for the other X-Men movies, where Wolverine is doing extremely violent things, but it's got to be pretty bloodless, and maybe just like 3 holes were put in their chest.
He has knives in his hands.
Yeah. Yeah, you never see limbs like being lopped off left and
Right.
right in the original X-Men movies, but that is probably what would happen if a Wolverine person attacked you. And so it's fun to just get to see them almost go pulp with it and
Oh, very much
just
so.
go all the way. And I really both was, taken aback by it, but also ultimately gratified by it.
Well, the funny thing, like you talk about that sort of the tone being similar to something like Children of Men, something very sort of dark and R-rated and gritty. That's something it's not
But
similar.
realistic,
Sure,
ultimately. Yeah.
but which brings me to to my point, which is something this is not similar to is The Wolverine,
yeah.
which was directed by James Mangold and was co-written by Scott Frank. And it's just so weird that those two, it's like weird that the guy who did the original Mad Max also did Fury Road. They just make
Yeah.
such different, PG-13 Wolverine. Like Darren Aronofsky was supposed to do the Wolverine and it was going to be R-rated and then it wasn't. It just turned into like, it was better than X-Men Origins Wolverine, but here's just another like fine Wolverine movie. And then it was like Logan, and then Logan was Logan.
Well, and I think beyond like the more obvious R rating things like profanity or violence, there's also an emotional intensity in this movie that goes beyond like a PG-13
Right.
superhero film. And it really pulls no punches. Like when
No.
when you meet Professor X, that
Oh,
first
it's
scene,
awful,
that
yeah.
first scene with him and Patrick Stewart is like heartbreaking. Like so many scenes are absolutely devastating and heartbreaking. And the movie's like, yeah, we're just going to do this. And there's no comfort for you. This is going to be as heartbreaking as it seems.
Well, like when the family dies on the farmhouse, like
Awful.
everybody's dead. Like no
And it
one
just
gets
happens
away.
so
Innocent
fast.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the film really is sort of this meditation on death, right? Or like moving towards the inevitability of death.
Mhm.
And so we know you can feel it even right at the very beginning. Like no one's getting out of this movie alive, probably, right? You kind of have that sense of doom that hangs over all of them, which honestly is very Western, which, we can talk if we want to more about this movie's Western influences, but Westerns are sort of necessarily about the death of something, right? Especially like the death of the gunslinger. And that sort of like the changing times and how you get too old for the times and then you there's nowhere for you to go, right? You feel that underneath in Logan's journey. And so it is very dark throughout. I don't know, just how the younger people who survive are then forced to cope with the deaths of the people that go before them.
Yeah. It's also interesting, again, comparing it to Children of Men, where there's, Patrick Stewart is the elder father figure and Michael Caine is sort of that in Children of Men. And it is interesting that there's like the different roles that the generations play, where like, the middle-aged person is like the one that's cynical and has given up on the world. And they meet like a young child that like offers the opportunity. And it's the older people that are saying like, no, there's still hope. And I just thought that was an interesting, like how that's the role that the older generation plays in both of these stories.
It's kind of like there's like a wisdom where that the older generation has gone beyond the cynicism and kind of has a wiser, more profound picture of everything. And the Clive Owens, the Hugh Jackmans are right in the middle of the crap, and they're not to that place yet.
And just like Star Wars and both Logan and Children of Men, like the mentor character is then killed by the dark side event essentially, and then that sort of helps the hero get the message, and it's just story arcs, normal story archetypes, but it always works.
Well, because when Charles Xavier does get killed, it leaves Logan with no one but Laura. But his daughter, right? Because it was his genetics supposedly that helped make her. And that you feel that in the second half of the movie, he kind of has nowhere to run now. She's kind of forcing him to confront his shadow, and he used to kind of
quite literally,
literally his shadow. But he it seems like in the first half of the movie, when Charles is around, he kind of has his old habits of like, yeah, old man, yeah, there's no Eden, there's no this, like, I'll just do this for the money, let's get past this. And the world kind of closes in on him by the end of the film, where he can't ignore, his ghost, his whatever Truby word we want to use for his weakness, his flaw, yada yada.
Yeah. Well, I think it, and again, Children of Men are both good examples of like the story forces the character to change. Like there are
Yes.
no other choices but for them to move forward.
And they resist it like so intensely.
as strongly as possible.
I counted like in the first act, there's so many refusals of the call. Like,
Yeah.
he refuses the call like and up until like the last second. Even when they're being attacked, he's gonna leave without Laura. You know, it's like he's refusing it until he really can't anymore, and she reveals herself to be, you know, Wolverine Jr.
Which that moment I want to talk about, because like that was
So
the
amazing.
moment where, because I was watching Logan and I was like, this is fun, and like X-Men, and like I've liked some of the movies, but like I'm not like an X-Men fan. And then the moment when the claws come out and
Yeah.
you realize, oh, that's who like I teared up, like I cried, and like I don't know why to this day, but there's just something, maybe it is just all this archetypal everything that's getting set up in that moment, but there's just so much meaning and it's just done so simply that it was like a really powerful moment. And then I watched it again with my girlfriend. She also like weirdly cried at that moment, and it's like, I don't know, that moment.
Do you feel a real desperation in this world? And I don't know, when there's moments of triumph in a world this bleak,
And hope.
it's more powerful than in a movie that's kind of not as bleak. Anytime in this movie when like a superhero moment kind of happens, it's much more potent to me.
Yeah, I said this in a previous episode, just like, I forget what movie I was comparing it to, but the violence in this movie is so visceral. There's something cathartic about it that, yeah, it does make me like tear up. And I think it's also just Daphne Keene's performance
Daphne Keene.
and
God.
Hugh Jackman's performance in certain moments, but it's just like there's something about it where I'm like, I'm so happy watching you murder so much.
Right. Well, and she's so badass. Like,
She's amazing.
the way she's like jumping across people and doing flips and
And her like scream yell that she
Oh,
does.
yeah, it's so
like,
primal.
yeah, that scene is so breathtaking because you don't expect it. You don't expect her to be that badass and that amazing.
Well, I was trying to think about other examples in which we have young girls. So Daphne Keene was 11 years old. That's how old the character is supposed to be. So trying to think about an action movie with
Kick-Ass.
a young girl. Oh, Kick-Ass is a great example for this, but yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, let's just make a better version of Kick-Ass.
I like Kick-Ass.
Sure, but Logan's better.
I hear you. No, but it's that sort of image, partly because it isn't realistic, right? So like you have to basically have an 11-year-old girl that has superpowers in order for her to be that badass or, you know, be highly trained or whatever. Something like Hannah actually comes to mind.
Right.
But yeah, we don't often get those examples. And when we do, there's something so refreshing and weird and different about them. Because when you have someone who's so physically disadvantaged, on the Star Wars podcast, we were talking about the Yoda like lightsaber. I think it was in the prequels one, right, where Yoda fighting Count Dooku. And how delightful that is to watch the first time you watch it, when you're just like, look at how little he is. But he's like, he's
flipping around.
but he's matched, like they're evenly matched. And so, yeah, there's something unique when we're watching Hugh Jackman, you know, slice people up. You're kind of like, yeah, like obviously this is like our stereotypical action hero, and that's how he looks. And so for me, that stuff is really hard to watch. So like the opening sequence of this where he kills all those
That's a
guys by the
brutal
side of the
opening
road.
scene.
Oh my God.
It's such a good scene.
I mean,
I want
it
to talk about
is.
that, but
Yeah.
yeah, continue.
But just the novelty of having people who are absolutely physically unequally matched. And so then the younger, smaller person has to rely on agility or like innovation, whatever it is. It's interesting. I mean, it's like probably a pretty good lesson to take going forward. Like, who could the superhero be? Does it have to be this like big hulking guy? Maybe it's not.
It doesn't
Right.
have to be a guy literally named Huge Jacked Man.
Well, the build up to that reveal also, I think,
Yeah.
is very artfully
That's what makes it
constructed.
so powerful.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Like I was getting almost like Matrix vibes of like setting up Trinity of
Yeah.
like they go inside and it's like, no, they're already dead, detective. Like,
Right.
like you hear the screaming and like there's just so much like build up that's just very, very well executed.
She walks out with the head under her arm, and
Right.
but they don't cut in. You don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And the opening scene with Logan in the car, like it also it's not just, hey, it's an action movie, here's some action. This is what this movie is. Like,
Yeah.
get
Right.
ready, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, it's such a good, I mean, so a difference between Children of Men and Logan is that, you know, we come into Logan with years and years of like knowledge of what Wolverine is and what X-Men is and stuff. And so I feel like that opening scene is great for both just setting up who Logan is in this movie and also like, this is the X-Men movie you're gonna get. Like, this is who he is now, and just like
he's old man Logan. He's not just perfect,
right?
Yeah.
And like every like shot, every like choice he makes, like we see him get shot with a shotgun, and he doesn't get right back up. Like he's taking damage, and it's like,
which
bad.
by the way is brilliant. I think having him be in this degraded state is such a brilliant move.
He's
because
passed out drunk in the back of his own limo.
Yeah. But just as far as like a mechanic in the story, to have him not be totally invincible anymore is so important for the story, because this is an X-Men story where you actually are scared that bad things are going to happen, that people might die. And he's included in that because he's not invincible anymore. And that was just, it's such a good move right off the bat. Make him not the perfect Wolverine we know and love who can just get up from anything.
And we see that where like he gets hurt and it hurts and there's damage done, but still when the guys are attacking, like shooting at his car, he like jumps in front of the bullets because he's like, no, my car. Like
he's worried about just money and normal human things.
Yeah, it just like it sets up so much about him and the world like so efficiently.
How he thinks of himself as kind of disposable. You know, the idea that like he's fine with his body being destroyed.
Right. You know, his car can't heal itself.
Right.
Yeah. And that moment where they shoot him and he's just like, oh, now I have to kill all these people. He's just so tired. Like,
right.
He's like, man, I really wish they hadn't tried to kill me. Now it's just escalating. Like, oh, I have to do it. It's a great performance moment for him. And it does also set that tone of that world weary. You're looking at a character who has all of these powers, but then you're actually also sort of pushing them to like, what are the disadvantages that come with this thing? So like, for the example, he's still alive and no one else is. That's awful. That's a disadvantage of basically being immortal. Right. And so you feel that loneliness where it's just like, all of the X-Men are gone and I'm still here and I wish I weren't. And then of course they take that sort of character design concept and make it literal with him being poisoned by the adamantium. Like that's what's poisoning him. That's what's killing him essentially. And so his strengths and whatever are actually what brings about his downfall in this movie, because they just, that sense of like, if you could go on forever, you wouldn't like it. You know, everyone has to have this like, again, that gloom of death that hangs over this is because he wants to die. We see it from the very first fight scene. Which is also a really like touching part of this movie.
Oh, yeah. It's very tough. You know, it's very tough issues it deals with of like self-destruction and really hating yourself and really hating what you've done in your life and feeling worthless. It's really heavy. And I love it for that.
Oh, yeah.
When I love that the moral and the lesson isn't like he doesn't decide that he wants to live at the end and like then he gets to live happily. Like he still dies, but he dies for something.
He dies for a cause, for something bigger than himself.
Yeah.
And I also like that, you know, when we talk about, oh, you've seen all the X-Men movies up until this one and you know such and such. This movie really doesn't rely on a knowledge of the X-Men universe. And it didn't even occur to me until like I was finishing up making notes for this that like, oh yeah, we might talk about the fact that there are other X-Men movies, because I just don't think of it as this sort of like it's the final X-Men movie or final, you know, Wolverine X-Men movie. But then the movie does have its own history. You know, we talked last episode, I talked about the distant hills concept of these details that you don't quite know fully. And it almost feels like, wait, did I miss a movie? Because it's like, what did Xavier do? Like what happened? I'm not sure. And you never quite get filled in on it. And that adds to this sort of upsettingness of it, you know, that the movie has its own internal history. And then, of course, it references like, oh, it's been a long time since the Statue of Liberty or whatever. Like it might reference the original films, but it relies more on its own history than it does assuming you've seen the previous 9 movies or whatever.
Well, and one thing I really appreciated about them in this movie, making it both feel very much not like a normal X-Men film, but also they still committed to the universe of X-Men. And we get the fun superpowers by the end. You know, the kids have various fun X-Men powers. They use the existing elements of the world, like Charles Xavier, you know, they did a what if. What if you had a degenerative brain disease and you're Professor X? What would happen? And I love that. It's not Vegas. It's like Oklahoma City. The casino sequence when he's under attack.
That sequence is amazing.
It's such a cool sequence. Like, what a great idea to like work that kind of a sequence into this movie, because it's so different from the other just slasher, traditional like Wolverine going crazy, slashing people in quick action.
It's a nice break from the constant hand-to-hand combat, and that's why I like in the scene that we were talking about where Laura first walks out of the warehouse or whatever, and then there's that whole hand-to-hand combat scene. But I like it when it moves into the chase part of it. Like anytime that this movie is doing something other than Logan takes out a bunch of dudes, which is most of what the action sequences are. Not that they're not incredibly choreographed.
They're done so well. Yeah.
They're done incredibly well. But anytime it's being a little more inventive and doing something a little different, like a chase sequence with a limo in like the middle of the desert, that's what it, for me, is like when it is really cool and different. And the scene you're talking about too.
Well, I just remember during that chase scene, even just at that point, I wrote down a note of like, this is just a really good movie. Not just a superhero movie, not just an X-Men movie. Like up until this point in this film, it's just everything has been executed so well. It's like it's the kind of action choreography, the way it's shot, the way it all flows is my kind of action. Like this is what I want from an action movie. And it just does it all in such a skillful way that's not relying on obvious CGI or obvious, as I like to say, bouncy effects.
Yeah. And there's a ton of CG, and it doesn't feel that way. Like even X-24, I think, is evil,
X-24.
Yeah,
right.
evil Wolverine. Like that's a CG character. Like that's a younger dude with Hugh Jackman's face on it. And
no, he played him too.
Well, there's a shot coming down the stairs.
Yeah, some of the time.
Yeah.
There's a video on YouTube. Just look up like Logan VFX or something like that. It's when he comes down the stairs and they look at each other. Like, Like it's incredible to look at the work that they did and just how real it looks. It just looks, and then The Irishman 2 years later is like, we could do worse.
Hello, listener. Michael here. When I sit down to figure out what I should watch, I often end up overwhelmed by decision fatigue. There's so many options to choose from, but there's also no guarantee I'm going to like what I choose. Mubi, however, offers an interesting solution to this problem. Mubi is a curated streaming service showing exceptional films from around the globe. Each and every film on Mubi is hand-selected by a human, never an algorithm. From cult classics to award-winning masterpieces, forgotten gems to festival-fresh independent releases, from the hard-to-find to the never-heard-of-that-before. And their catalog of films is always changing, but never overwhelming. Each film is only available for 30 days. And there are only ever 30 films total to watch. So every day a new film premieres and another rotates out. It's a great balance of curated selection and just a bit of time pressure to make sure you'll never spend more time looking for something great to watch than actually watching something great. You can try Mubi for free for 30 days at mubi.com/beyondthescreenplay. That's mubi.com/beyondthescreenplay. If you were to just go to the website without using our link, you only get a 7-day free trial. But Beyond the Screenplay listeners get a whole month of great cinema for free. So again, head to mubi.com/beyondthescreenplay or click the link in our show notes to start your 30-day trial of Mubi. In doing so, you'll be helping to support this show and get access to a service that I think you'll like. Thanks to Mubi for sponsoring Beyond the Screenplay. Well, yeah, like I feel like it's a good example of it's not about like it's gonna look fake either way if you're like analyzing how real a thing is or not, but it's how you use it and how you couch it and everything else. And I feel like this is such a great example of like, when you go and you watch those VFX reels, you realize that's crazy that was visual effects. I never thought about it. Now that I look at it, it's pretty obvious, but the way it's all put together, like so much realness is happening and you're invested in what's happening. So you care more about what's going to happen than.
I'm not just waiting for the action scene to be over. I'm on the edge of my seat because I'm really invested and really care what's happening. Mm-hmm. So,
he's a cleverly constructed villain with the bionic hand or whatever he has. Because you have to get around this thing of like, well, there aren't any new mutants. So he can't actually be a mutant, but he has to have some superpowers and in order for him to be any sort of match for Logan at all, right? And so that idea of like he's bioengineered sort of, or like he has this like genetic enhancements or this robotic arm, it's just, that's a clever device. But then also they make him kind of a Wolverine fan, which is really interesting. Like when that first conversation when he gets in the car.
I do love that character though, because he's very distinct. You know, he's not just like the muscle. He's got that southern drawl.
That drawl is
it's
really cool.
Something really enjoyable about his performance.
Yeah, but there is that sense where he kind of wishes he were a mutant almost. I don't know. It sort of creates that dark mirror in some ways that we talk about with villains sometimes. It's cool. And yeah, also his death. Maybe the most satisfying death in like
okay, it's just like
all of superhero
all
movies.
Their powers
the kids,
combined.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. See, I kind of felt like let down by it a little bit. Like I thought the build up to it was there, but I wanted like the Death Star explosion moment. Like I feel like he's just like now he has vines over him, and now we cut back to, and then he's just gone for the rest
You can't
of the
really
movie.
see what happened to him besides grass over him.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a cool idea. You just don't get that ooh moment because that's
He doesn't explode or
Right.
something.
Yeah. No, I feel like I wanted him to explode.
Okay,
I mean, look at
so-
every-
Michael wanted a blood explosion. All right?
Look at every other death in the movie. It's like somebody's head explodes or somebody gets.
I kind of thought they were going to do the thing that the girl who can freeze people. I thought they were going to do a thing where she freezes him completely and then he like explodes.
Right, like Terminator
T2.
well, like,
Yeah,
like the
yeah.
arm. She does it to the arm.
Yeah, which is a
Right.
cool moment.
Yeah.
Watching this film again, the character of Gabriella, the nurse who's smuggling Laura, what a wonderful performance. And it's another thing that sets this movie apart from the usual superhero standard fare, because she feels like she could be in an Oscar drama.
Yeah,
You know, her scenes with
absolutely.
Hugh Jackman are really the intensity she brings to the performance. You really feel like she's been through something and she cares so much.
The moment where he says, "That's your daughter," and she pauses and
Yeah.
then she says, "Yes." That moment is so brilliantly played because you get both of those layers in there. You get the like, well, she's lying. So that's sort of like the sort of surface thing you're supposed to pick up from the pause.
Mhm.
But then underneath the pause is, I love her like a mother though, so why not? Right?
Right.
Like, and if I've been with her since she was a baby or whatever, then yeah, I am her mother. And
Mhm.
so those two things are just built into that single word, and it's brilliantly delivered. I love it. I was like, yeah, she is. Why not? You know?
And I also just love I totally believe this beautiful story of they hired these local nurses to come work in this evil facility.
And the nurses broke them out.
And the
it's
nurse,
so cool.
and I love what a beautiful human story it is of the nurses fell in love with these children they were raising and actually felt for them as human beings, whereas the scientists saw them as things. And I love even the way she put it, like they thought we were too stupid or, too ignorant to like, do anything. But the whole time we were the ones actually raising these children and we actually cared about them and we're going to get them out. Which, what a cool story.
I have one complaint about Gabriella, which has nothing to do with the actor and nothing to do with the character. When did she edit and do all the voiceover for this?
She's a fantastic editor.
Yeah.
So that's the only thought I was having that whole
she
time.
used
on
that-
her phone,
Right.
it's just like in her hotel room, I guess,
Right, like-
doing voiceover and editing and
iMovie with one finger
Yeah, she
here,
used the hell
dragging
out
to
of like
there.
iMovie app on iPhone. Yeah.
The killers are coming in to get her, and she's like, "Hang on, give me 20 minutes." Almost done. No
Also,
project.
how did no one notice how much video she was taking inside this top secret facility?
right,
is
right.
like my other question that I have when I watch it. It's like she's literally recording everything.
Right, and the sound is great. She's on the other side of the wall.
Amazing, yes.
Like,
Got a mic on everything.
Right.
Yeah.
it's in the future. And stuff.
But something you said, Alex, Oscar kind of drama or whatever. When I saw this movie in March of 2017, I thought all three of these main actors, they could get, some recognition during award time. Like
I mean, Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart's
He's
incredible.
incredible,
Daphne
yeah.
Keene's incredible. Hugh Jackman is
Yeah.
he's like the straight man, the leading man, but like still he does a phenomenal job. But guess what? I mean, first of all, yeah, it's a comic book type movie, so I guess it's harder. But also the movie came out in March, and the award ceremonies are here's the best actor in a picture that came out in the past 2 months.
This
so.
was nominated for adapted screenplay. For the record.
but like
It did
come
get
on.
one nod.
Yeah,
Not for any of the other, like we typically see our action movies getting nominated for sound editing, sound mixing, special effects, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I like the nod for adapted screenplay here. It deserves it. It's a great script.
I
Yeah.
agree. I just feel like
That's why we're all at this table.
Could have been more.
yeah,
No,
Yeah.
I agree.
just those performances are
No, they are. And Daphne Keane is just unreal for someone as young as she is. And I really love the move to make her quiet for most of the movie. She's able to be so expressive when saying nothing.
Mm-hmm.
She says nothing for 3/4 of this movie, and she's awesome.
And when her voice does
really
come out,
respect
it's
it.
so adorable.
Yeah.
That first scene, when she's just speaking Spanish at him really quickly,
Yeah, yeah.
it's the most adorable thing. Yeah.
Charlo, Ricto, Delilah.
It's so they have the audition tape, I think, on the Blu-ray where it's like her and Hugh Jackman, and they were just like, these are your lines, just try to annoy him as much as possible, and just like watching her just like go and launch into it, and just like the chemistry between them immediately. It's like it was really, really impressive that they
Yeah.
found her. She's
also
amazing.
like bilingual. She's British and Spanish, you know, so it's just like she's just
Perfect.
I just think it could have been an easy choice to make her precocious.
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like you
Right.
could have made her really talkative and you could have made her whatever. I like that they have her brooding. Like she has the silence creates this sort of like dark cloud around her. And it also gives you all of these question marks where like even when she in the gas station where she puts on the sunglasses and she just like, you know, tears that bag off, tears the top off the bag of chips or whatever. And she's just eating. It's kind of playful. But you still have that undercurrent of danger because not just because of what we've seen from her. Well, also that the right before it, we've seen her screaming at the horse, the
Right.
like mechanical horse that she's riding on. But it's her silence too, and how they don't give her anything to say. It's a cool screenwriting choice.
And I love her matter of factness.
Oh yeah,
Even when she's fighting, you
so
know,
mature.
there's just this like direct matter of factness of like, I will dispense with you and then you and then you. And when Hugh Jackman's falling asleep in the car, she's like, you're asleep now?
I will
Fine.
drive.
Move your leg. I'm going to drive.
yeah.
It's just really, really satisfying to watch
Yeah.
like a girl character be the adult in the room.
Absolutely.
There's a thing you get from child actors a lot of the time, which is like, oh, I'm supposed to be, you know, untrustworthy in this scene, so I'm just going to glare. And it's like she glares, but you can just tell there's more weight behind her performance, where it feels three-dimensional and not like, oh, this is how smiling works, and this is how you know.
Right.
Right. I feel like that is what's so like scary about her, is that there's so much meaning behind her glares. It's like, I don't have that much meaning behind my glare. Like,
It's the Dakota
how can I
Fanning
have it?
effect. Of, you're too young to be this wise.
Right.
Yeah.
What's happening?
Totally, but Dakota Fanning, and it's nothing on her, but she often did get cast in those more precocious roles.
Right.
And also, I love how this movie just absolutely doesn't make her cute at any point.
Yeah.
Cute is not a word that would come into your brain about this character. There's nothing cute about her. She's incredibly dangerous. And I think it is that introduction when we see her bouncing the ball out in the parking lot, she's just sort of like, yeah, shrouded in.
Menacing.
She is.
It's kind of scary.
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. And so much so that when she walks out of the warehouse with the head under her arm, you don't know what it is, but I'm like, that's a head. Like, for sure, she decapitated someone. There's no doubt, even though you haven't seen her do anything violent up until that point. What a testament to the performance there.
And I love Boyd Holbrook's reaction. They put this was in the trailer because this is why I remember it so well. She starts walking towards him. He goes, "No, no."
I feel like everyone's reactions to her and watching
Yes.
watching Wolverine play dad is just so much fun.
It's fun.
I'm just like
Yeah.
when she's like gonna kill the cashier guy or whatever, and he's just like, not okay. Like it's just so much fun. Like there's fun in this movie also, like despite it being so dark and dreary and dealing with all these heavy themes, it's also fun to watch, and putting Wolverine in this situation that we've never seen him in before.
It's a
and
fish out of water classic thing.
like watching.
Also,
him in
we've
that.
talked about Wolverine's father figure, Xavier, and we talked about his daughter figure. We haven't talked about his wife, Caliban,
Yeah.
which I just love when he's like,
Steven Merchant.
Yeah, he's like,
I love his
I'm
performance.
trying to get the
Me
blood
too.
out of your shirts. It's
I
like,
know.
I don't want to fight, but we need to have a talk.
It's part of that first act that feels so pitch perfect.
Yeah.
Their dialogue scene in that first act is also a brilliant piece of writing.
Yes.
It's just, it all feels perfect.
Well, and again, the performances are just so good. because he's dismantling Logan and like revealing all these lies.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's such a like quiet matter of fact, like it's so effective the way it's performed and written and all the things.
So a character like Caliban could very easily feel like he only exists for expository reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that this character is constructed, he has stakes in everything. And so he has his own life. He has his own agenda, potentially like
His own sacrifice too.
and absolutely his
Mhm.
own sacrifice. And so that scene where he's telling Wolverine everything that's wrong, he's like, I can see that there's something wrong with you. I can see the scars that aren't healing. I can see all of this. You feel that it's coming from a place of a real three-dimensional character because it doesn't feel like it's plain expository dialogue. There's actual conflict happening within the scene because Caliban cares, and whatever his fate is bound up with Wolverine. Whatever happens to Logan happens to Caliban. And so you get that sense of like, yeah, a familial relationship where when you're confronting a loved one, it's not just them that's like going through something. You're also going through something. And Caliban definitely goes on a whole journey in this movie.
Well, and I feel like Caliban in the first act, he's really the caretaker,
Absolutely.
And being a caretaker for a loved one is extremely draining and is
Two loved ones, really, because he
really-
is trying to take care of both of them.
yeah, and so you see that he kind of loves them and wants them to be well, but as a caretaker, you just get exhausted and you're just like, I can't hold all this. You guys are not taking care of yourselves. This is a disaster. The medicines aren't working.
He's staying at home, doing the housework, trying to keep the family together
Yeah.
while Logan's out making money.
And
Yeah,
if you mess up, the world dies. Because,
Right.
Like it's an even higher stakes
Right.
version of.
But yeah, just what a wonderful character.
Yeah.
Once again, it's that Oscar caliber writing where it's getting at like a real world thing.
Right.
Like being a caretaker is draining, and it's a mixture of both love and just like depression and
Yes.
frustration. So wow, just so cool. An X-Men movie can give us this. I
Well,
love it.
And this brings me back to the main thing that I think about when I think about this movie, which is scope. Like, for some reason, when we have characters that are superheroes or space wizards or whatever it is, like whenever we have characters with extra special powers or those kinds of things, we want to tell stories that are about the fate of the universe. And the
Right.
stakes have to be just cranked all the way up. And it has to be about like, how are the X-Men or the Avengers or whoever going to save the universe now, or the Jedi, whatever it is. And I love that the scope of this movie is so pared down. That is what I think we should be moving towards
Yes.
with our big action movies. Like, why we
Because
have seen that
we
people
care.
respond to character studies
We care.
of even extraordinary people. And, sort of the earliest comic book example of this. I mean, Marvel Comics really were the people who created this, but we've talked about like Spider-Man before. Why do we care about Spider-Man? Because he's a human. It's not because he's super. That's not why we care. We care because he's human. And so the more that you can drill down to find a human story, which might be very small in scope, I think the more that you get that heart that we really respond to.
And Spider-Man is a teenage kid in school. He's
Yeah.
not Tony Stark or Bruce Wayne as some billionaire,
Right.
And obviously those
He
stories
doesn't have power already.
right.
Yeah.
Those stories can also be human, obviously, but I think that's Peter Parker is one of those superheroes where he just starts as just the most underdoggy, regular kid down the street, and that's it's easy. It's an easier place to start from, I think, to make a human story.
Well, it kind of ties in to something that I talked about in the Dark Knight video that we'll talk about later when we talk about the Dark Knight. But even in the Dark Knight, which feels more epic in scope, the consequences are still believable consequences.
Mhm.
Like the Joker could win and it would destroy the franchise. Like there's a meta aspect acting on it,
Right.
where when it's like, is
The-
the universe gonna die? No. So like,
Right.
Which is something that happened in The Dark Knight Rises that people didn't like. It's like once you have a nuclear bomb, the stakes almost get too big and it doesn't become this relatable character thing anymore in quite
Right.
the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. And Logan clearly shows that people will die. Like there will be consequences to things. And I always appreciate that when movies do that, because then you actually get invested because you don't know what's going to happen.
Right. But it's not Days of Future Past where there's time travel and space portals and all of that stuff. This is so grounded.
There are
by
real
comparison.
consequences.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you can't reverse it.
You can't. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also like, I hadn't thought of this until now, but coming off of Rise of Skywalker and Endgame, where the challenge is how do we make the biggest movie yet?
Right.
And to make Wolverine's final movie the smallest movie yet is not only a very bold choice, but it's a very smart choice.
Yeah, I just want to call out that the budget for this was less than $100 million.
Hmm.
So it's still a big superhero movie, but it's not Endgame, which is $320 million. This is $97 million. It's much smaller in scope and budget and everything. It's a wisely approached entry in sort of the X-Men franchise in a way that I just so appreciate. Like, imagine if Wolverine's send-off had been in one of those huge movies where, like, that's where Wolverine dies in a space battle
it wouldn't have been
somewhere.
as powerful.
Hold on. It was
Oh, it's fair.
in X-Men 3, and everyone hated it.
Oh,
Yep.
right.
Good point. I rest my case.
Which is why I love Days of Future Past, because it's like,
Never
nah.
mind.
I feel like it should be pretty clear to the studios that people respond to these movies, these more the R-rated adults, smaller.
Oh, they got that message.
Yeah, I think so.
They got it.
I hope that we can have more of these. I know they got it multiple times now, and I think that it's only a good thing because these are the movies that actually keep me engaged. Like when the world's ending every time, I'm not engaged. And why not have a diversity of types of superhero movies if we're stuck with superhero movies for who knows how long? Let's have a variety. Let's have some of them that are these R-rated character stories. And same with, we're talking about Star Wars. Why can't Star Wars be diverse like this?
Yeah.
It's Disney, so maybe not. But why not use these universes to tell different kinds of genre stories that are going to appeal to different audiences? And movies that I'm going to be happy to go pay for because I'm not getting the same thing over and over again.
Well, I think Brian was saying in the Slack workspace, like, I would love a coming of age movie with like teenage Luke or Leia, like on their respective planets and nothing Star Warsy happens and they're just like fighting with their adoptive, families.
Right.
It's like, yeah, I'm here for that. Like,
I was on Twitter and someone asked me about it. I was like, so Leia would be like Zoe from the West Wing. It's just like her dad's like the senator who like literally becomes the president and at the end of West Wing, spoilers. So she's dealing with like the political thing, but Luke's just like a kid, Bullseye and Womp Rats on Tatooine. He's running around. Come on, I'd watch the hell out of that series.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah. Anyway, I am looking forward to more diversity in like our big franchises or imaginary worlds or whatever that is, like fantasy stories and things like that. So I'm sure some of them will be bad, but
right. It's not a guarantee of goodness.
Right. But
But
scaling up is also not a guarantee of goodness, as we've seen, right? Scaling up, pouring more money, making something huge in terms of like financial risk and therefore safe in terms of content, that doesn't necessarily yield a good movie either.
Right.
So instead of heading that direction blindly, why not reconsider?
Yeah, I feel like just make good movies. Like they can be R, they
this
can
is
be
a good movie.
PG-13, but like
you can make a good movie.
yeah, you can feel that like time and effort and thought was put into crafting the story. Like there was so much love, and I think you can really feel like they know it's Wolverine's lot. Like they wanted to make this special.
It is.
And it is.
And also Charles Xavier's last movie.
Yeah.
And just Patrick Stewart's performance.
God,
Can we
he's
just talk about it again for a minute?
Please, let's please.
Just the humanity of this man, Patrick Stewart. I just love him so much. And there's something so gentle and sweet about his presence in this movie. And he brings a lot of the comedy too, actually. A lot of the lightness.
He has a lot of range too. He's going from sort of like doddering old fool to then like crying and resentful and sort of remembering what he did and having to come to terms with that and everything. He's not a one-dimensional character. He gets a lot of room to breathe.
And his love for Laura and his sweetness with her and
yeah.
And he just commits so hard to all of those levels too.
Yeah.
Like when you meet him and his mind is gone and he is, that the old person that isn't really there. And like there's just so much emotion there. He's committed so hard so that, like you were saying, it does create this whole range that just I feel like I got to know Charles Xavier more than ever in this movie. Also, just because you see just the entire range of the world that he's inhabiting in these last like days of his life, basically.
And I think we're used to seeing mentor figures that are incredibly powerful. So like when you think about Gandalf or Obi-Wan or somebody like that is incredibly powerful. And then even when they die, it's like in this very badass sort of action-y way.
Confident.
Because they're very powerful. Charles Xavier is so disempowered and lost in this movie that it's so poignant, but it's also so realistic, going back to just like building a believable family. What does a believable family look like?
Right, an actual family.
Right.
With an a person who will die soon, whose brain is degenerating.
Exactly. And that, like, just the scene at the beginning where Logan is helping him into bed and like all of the stuff, he's, like, no, you don't remember, I'm not that person, whatever it is, addressing the memory lapses and things like that in just a very matter-of-fact way. Like, all right, I'm going to tuck my aging grandfather, father, whoever, into bed now and just whatever. It's a scene that, like, many of us have lived, but we see so rarely in our movies because it's not attractive, it's not cool, it's not sexy, it's not powerful. It's just this very difficult thing that a lot of us have to go through at some point in our lives of taking care of someone. It's really well observed.
Well, I think it's going back to also like make a movie good, like make a story, like that's what stories are supposed to do. Like they're supposed to teach us about real life and like what it means to go through these things. And I think that's also what I love about Logan, is that it's using X-Men to like tell this very human, relatable story. And I feel like in general, that's when the X-Men is at its best, when it's kind of operating as allegory for lots of different things.
And the scene, of course, we have to talk about it, where Charles gets stabbed by X-24 after this emotional monologue, and it's
like
awful.
the most tragic possible.
Right. That like you could only give to like Patrick Stewart also. Like, you're going to talk for 2 minutes uninterrupted, make this feel organic and powerful, and then he does it.
And it's really sad that Logan doesn't hear that monologue.
Yeah.
But I also love that when Logan like tucks him in at night, he says like, "This is the happiest day I've had in a long time." Like he's still
he does hear that part.
Right.
Yeah. Ugh. I wasn't ready for it because So like, in fairness, I didn't see this movie in 2017. I saw it recently, and I was not ready for that moment. Somehow it had like slipped by me in pop culture or whatever, and I was like, I had no idea that wasn't Logan. And you see it in Patrick Stewart's performance where he's like, I just got stabbed by my most trusted person, and trying to make sense of that. What does that even mean?
And I feel like that is my only complaint about the moment and kind of the second half of the film, is that it starts to get a bit muddied with that, where like I feel like his monologue is robbed a little bit for me because I'm trying to figure out, wait, that's Logan, but it's not Logan, and like there's complications being added in that moment, and I think it still works, but I remember kind of having to do a lot of mental work about, okay, wait, so they made a clone of him and he's back, and there starts to be a lot going on, and maybe it's like a little on the nose for me that it's bad Logan and all these things. I think it's all good. I just remember that being a moment where the movie shifts a little bit from, I've been on this amazing perfect ride more or less so far, and now there's bumps in the road that are just giving me it stops being perfect is my criticism.
Right. For me, the moment it stops being perfect is when things start to be a little bit convenient. Like in Children of Men, when they have a similar respite, it's when they go to see Jasper, who is a previously introduced character who already has meaning in the story. But in this movie, we have to introduce a whole new family in the midpoint, introduce their like particular family problems with like the neighbors who are like turning off their water, and the politics of the world where they've been bought out, but they still have a lien on the water well.
It gets really messy there.
It's a lot of like exposition that doesn't pay off beyond that like 10 minutes of the movie. And I don't understand why they couldn't figure out maybe a tighter way to accomplish the same thing of giving him a moment of family or respite, maybe with a more known character or somebody who's introduced earlier, like Children of Men. Because I remember when they like randomly have to pull over because of randomly bad automated trucks.
Which, by the way, is the most offensive part of this movie. I do not like the way they portray self-driving cars.
They're supposed to be safer, but they're like super dangerous, apparently.
It's like, what? Come on.
The horses all survive somehow, so it's fine.
Yeah.
I was actually super worried about those horses.
Yeah. There's a really offhand comment as they're walking to like go check the water later where he's like, do you think the automated trucks were the doing of this company that like doesn't like you?
really?
Yeah, like
Oh.
maybe that's why they like swerved into your truck. Anyway, but that's the moment where the movie stops being perfect for me, because it's like, this is too convenient, and like Charles says you got to help them, and they're like, come over for dinner, and like, you got to stay the night, you must stay. Like, I don't know, it just all felt too contrived in a way that the rest of the movie hadn't to that point.
Even the final act where they do make it to that outpost where all of the young mutants are. Yeah, I wish there was a way that also could be neatened. I was like, they just made it there. Logan's like passed out, so she manages to drive them there somehow, but they like then they like pull him up on this stretcher, and they have a stretcher for that.
Have they used this for like
Yeah,
other
like,
like
how
supply
many-
runs or?
How many people have they lifted up on this stretcher up the side of this cliff face? Does this happen a lot? Like, I don't know. And then, of course, when he wakes up and you see that syringe there full of magical
Green.
Yeah.
goo,
The stuff that makes
I'm
you
just
crazy.
like, and it says only take a little at a time. Like, he's taking it all. Like, it starts to get a little bit,
Comic booky.
yes, comic booky at that point. But I think, again, the character work is done underneath of it. And so you're,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah,
still super invested.
And some of my favorite moments are in that part of the movie, like when he wakes up from his nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
The scene, the dialogue he has with Laura, where she
Mhm.
finds his adamantium bullet, and you know his Hugh Jackman's performance in that scene, where he's giving her advice about, you've killed people, you've done bad things too, and you're gonna have to live with that now. You know, no matter how many bumps there are on the road, the movie always comes back to these core themes, and it continues to just get back on track. So
Yeah.
even though I have these qualms, the movie at its core is very solid.
And it's all done in service of, like you said, setting up something that does pay off. Like,
Yes.
Right.
all the way to the final shot of the movie, which is just like amazing and beautiful. And it seems so
It's
obvious.
so brilliant.
Yeah,
It's
But
so
it
it's
is.
brilliant.
also just so powerful and meaningful.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have seen Shane recently.
Or ever.
Shocking, Michael. The movie Shane is obviously an influence on this. And so I think there is taking sort of a form, nothing is new under the sun. So anything that you are writing, something is sort of out there that's like a decent comp for it, probably. I like it when it crosses more into homage, though, which this feels like it does, where you have the scene, it's set up earlier, because a lot of the plot elements here are, again, classic Western. Or not classical Western. We don't have to get into Western subgenres, but like Westerns many of us have seen. And so, yeah, a lot of these themes and forms are already baked in there. But then to actually call them out and be like, we understand that this is a Western. This is actually quite similar to this particular Western about trying to protect young people from the damage that they might, inherit by like wanting to be tough or whatever, or like, because that's Wolverine's whole thing. He has too much armor, right? He's not willing to open himself up to love and family and stuff like that. And the only way that you are able to open yourself up is by not hardening yourself. So all of the scar imagery in this, where like every single scar on Wolverine's body is a symbol of another way that he has like sealed himself off from things. And so you're not going to be able to protect Laura from killing people. We've already seen her do that a lot, but you can possibly protect her from being as hardened to others, right? And like still maintaining some kind of core of kindness. And that's what Shane is about. And so when she delivers that final monologue directly out of Shane, it is highlighting like, look, we know that this kind of story has been told before, and we're going to point out this is the theme that it's just, I appreciate that. It's borrowing from film language, quite literally in the exact words of a film that has gone before, in a meaningful way.
It's kind of just saying like,
It actually
this
reminded
is
me
Shane. We're just doing it.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of the eulogy in The Dark Knight Rises, because when they think Bruce Wayne has died at the end of The Dark Knight Rises, she doesn't read anything out of the Bible, or it's Alfred or whoever it is, Fox. Doesn't read anything out of the Bible. They read the last like paragraph of A Tale of Two Cities from Charles Dickens, because they're calling attention to a literary property that has gone before that is very similar in plot and theme. So I don't know. I like that a lot.
I think the other side of that coin is that comic books exist, like X-Men comics exist.
Oh yeah,
in
exactly.
this universe,
Mhm.
which I like as a sort of, I mean, I just like it as a concept, but I also like it as a sort of way of, it almost makes it feel more real to acknowledge the
Yes.
comic world, because he, you know, when he says this is all made up and everything, that makes it feel like, oh yeah, we're not in X-Men 3 land
Well,
anymore.
I love
Like,
it because it also can tell you to read the previous X-Men movies as the tales
Right.
that were being told in
Oh,
this
yeah.
actual realistic world.
Right.
This is the real X-Men world that is not the polished PG-13 version. This is what the kids read about, which I love that meta aspect
I
to
hadn't
it.
thought about it that way, but I like that as a
Mhm.
reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, maybe half of it happened and the rest is all lies. And
Right.
he says something about like, yeah, you know, nothing that somebody in a leotard can do. Like that sort
Right.
of shade throwing on like the sanitized comic book versions.
Yeah.
There's
Which
an
can
amazing,
explain why different actors are playing the same people, even though they're definitely the
Sure.
same age. And they've
Right.
been the same age for 20 years. So it's like, whatever, it doesn't matter.
because Wolverine ages slowly. There's an amazing like clip that you have to find on the original X-Men DVD by like doing a bunch of, you know, running through a maze or something, and it's just Hugh Jackman in the full yellow spandex, and he's just running through the hall, and he's like, Gene.
I love that Hugh Jackman too has a sense of humor about his own career.
Oh my gosh,
it's so
yeah.
refreshing.
He's one of those iconic, you know, like Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones or something like that, where it's just
Mhm.
like he is Wolverine. Like,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
17 years? It's
Something like
something
that.
crazy.
It was
like
something
that.
like that.
2000,
Yeah.
I think, was X-Men.
yeah.
He is, I was reading this, apparently the actor who has played a comic book character for the longest in film history.
Mm.
Wow.
Makes sense.
He has a record.
And it's so great that he got to finish it. Like, we're going to finish it. I'm choosing to do it, and just going out on this high note is just
Right.
awesome.
You couldn't have a better finish for the character. You really couldn't.
Yeah.
Mhm. Hi, everybody. It's Trisha. If you like listening to this podcast as much as we like making it for you, we could really use your help in a couple of really important ways. First of all, you can support us by writing us a review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps us get more ears on the channel, which could help us bring on more people. It would be a really nice thing to do, and we would appreciate it. The other way is to join us on Patreon. If you become a patron for only $2 a month, you get access to exclusive content, and it's also one of the best ways to interact with us, and we'd love to hear from you. So please join us on Patreon, and now back to the show.
Why don't we go around and talk about what lessons we're going to take away from Logan? Brian, do you want to start us off?
Sure. It's really what we already talked about, which is that, you know, we talked about in the Star Wars podcast, and Alex, you talked about it plenty, which is taking those different takes on things and franchises. But also, I think the thing to extend from that is then keep that world consistent, you know, because I
Mhm.
think it's like, yeah, we can talk about Logan or Dark Knight as being like, okay, they did this gritty thing and they did it well, but also there's Thor Ragnarok and Deadpool, which,
Yeah.
you know, we're just like, look, we decided to do a very specific thing and we stayed consistent with that, and that's what we went for. And I think that like that's where we sort of movies sort of feel off to us. And, you know, I don't want to always pick on the DC universe, but it's the easiest example, which is just, we tried to be gritty. You know, I said this in a previous episode, but like we tried to be gritty, but we also wanted to be over the top and bouncy, to use Alex's phrase. Like, it's just like we're trying to do too many things. And I think that like, it's not just let's be gritty. It's no, let's find something, first of all, hopefully that hasn't been done before, because that's a problem with 90% of comic book movies, is we've already seen it before. But also, whatever that thing is, let's just kind of tunnel vision it and stay true to that. And I think that that's something we're seeing more and more, and it's exciting.
Awesome. Alex?
I think one thing that I took away from this viewing was the power of withholding Laura calling him daddy for the death scene. And just, you could have had an earlier scene where they like reconcile and become father and daughter, but just withholding that acknowledgement and that connection, him saying, oh, this is how it feels, her calling him daddy,
that
like
line.
saving it for that very last moment and not giving us really any of it earlier in the movie is just such a powerful choice. And I think that's just the lesson I'm taking away, is even if it feels like painful to not give the characters, you know, this connection, this catharsis until their very last moments. Like, it's almost not fair to Wolverine. Like, he should have more life with his daughter or surrogate daughter, but it's better and more powerful in the movie. It's gonna make me cry more if you save it until he's about to die like 5 seconds later. That's just, just do it. Go for the most painful, tragic thing. So that's my lesson.
I like it. Just going back a little bit to Caliban and thinking about how in action movies, especially when we are putting them together, I think writers, and I'm just as guilty of this as anybody else probably, start to treat characters like chess pieces on a chessboard. Like, I'm gonna move them around in whatever way like leads me to the goal that I have, and they don't need to have motivations of their own. I'm moving them, right? And so I love the approach to every character in this. That's why I called it out earlier, Boyd Holbrook as the villain, and Caliban especially, but like all of the characters, even Richard E. Grant as Xander Rice, I guess is the character name, but he's awesome. I mean, I love Richard E. Grant anyway. All of these characters feel real. The things that they are doing feel motivated, and especially with Caliban, but with basically everybody, no one is going somewhere just because they need to conveniently for the plot. Like, it feels like the plot is almost the beautiful organic result of the question of, well, what would this person do next, right? Instead of saying like, I know where it's going, I'm just like plotting it, soullessly. The characters all feel like, oh, the thing that they're doing next is logically what this person would do in this situation. And so just highlighting all the design of the supporting characters and how well lived in they feel.
Yeah, definitely.
Michael?
I keep focusing on the first act. And what I appreciated this time also is how long the first act is.
Yeah.
It's like 40 minutes or something. And it kind of reminded me, mentioning Scott Frank, who wrote Minority Report. Minority Report also has a very long first act. And I think I've realized I really like long first acts. Like if they're well constructed, I just appreciate taking the time to build the investment and then also build up the momentum to send us into the second act exactly the way you're supposed to do it. And so I think I this is a movie I'm probably going to watch the first act of a lot to really take those pieces apart even more, to just track all the different ways they set up everything and really make us feel where the character is so that we understand the importance of the journey. And I think this movie just does that really, really well.
Because in both Minority Report and this movie, it's so meaningful when they set off on their journey. It's not just, oh, it's time for the movie to start, let's get going. There's so much meaning in that moment.
And when that moment happens, you get it. Like, there's so much meaning, and it's been so clearly conveyed that as soon as
it was inevitable, it was going to happen.
Yeah,
like here it comes.
Understand. Well, now I know what they have to do because of all the things, which I always really appreciate. Yeah. Cool. Let's quickly go around and say what we've been watching recently. Brian, I'm going to start with you again.
All right. It was hard for me to pick one because I've been burning through all the 2019 films that I missed. Like, for instance, I watched The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, written and directed by Chiwetel Ejiofor, a.k.a. Luke from Children of Men. But instead, I'm going with Fighting With My Family, written and directed by Stephen Merchant, a.k.a. Caliban from Logan. And it's a movie by WWE Studios. Yes, that WWE. And it's about it's the story of the wrestler Paige. And you would think, okay, that's a movie that matters, is good. But it is. It's her parents are played by Nick Frost and Lena Headey. Vince Vaughn is her coach. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in the role he was born to play as himself, and Florence Pugh as Paige, who
that's the main reason I want to see this movie.
Exactly. And she got nominated for Little Women, and it's literally my third favorite performance of hers this year. It's a great performance. Yeah, and I think that's my frustration with Oscar films. It's like, oh, the best of every single category happens to be these same 10 films. Like, how convenient.
Right. Why can't it be spread across? Like, why can't she get an Oscar nom for Midsommar, even if that's not going to be nominated?
Right. Even if people are like, oh, this isn't an Oscar-worthy movie. It's like, okay,
it does happen here and there.
Occasionally, but it's all here and there. Like, it's the politics and the
right, all the whatever.
This is not an Oscar podcast.
No.
Yeah. We should do one of those. Should we?
But yeah, it does not feel like hey, we're making a movie about wrestling. It feels like a British comedy / drama with an amazing lead. So check it out.
Awesome. Trisha?
I recently, for reasons unknown, watched Bringing Out the Dead, which is Martin Scorsese's 1999 ambulance driver drama with Nicolas Cage and Patricia Arquette and a lot of other people. With Nicolas Cage, Patricia Arquette, Ving Rhames, and John Goodman, and a lot of other really awesome people in it. And it's really interesting because it's so moody. Like, it feels film noir-y. Like, there's all of this voiceover and rain, and Nicolas Cage is acting like a detective, essentially. But it's this ambulance driver drama thing, and he's so burned out. He really is sort of like a hard-boiled private detective kind of guy. It's just really interesting tonally, especially for a Scorsese movie. I like watched it back to back almost with The Irishman, like 2 nights in a row. I watched The Irishman and then I watched this, and I was like, what does one make of this filmmaker? Really fascinating movie. I'm a little obsessed with it right now just because it's so bonkers. Like, Nick Cage is at his most bonkers. But like, it so works in this movie. He's so well harnessed and cast. Anyway,
And
check it out.
the tone of the movie is like fits Nick Cage.
Yeah. So I watched The Irishman, and then actually I watched Valley Girl, and then I also watched
Nice.
this. So just wild to really think about these careers that we've gotten to like witness. So yeah, it sort of explore all the corners of it that you maybe haven't yet. It's really interesting.
Awesome. Bringing Out the Dead. All right.
Mhm.
Alex?
This is kind of an unusual one. I discovered the PBS documentary kind of news series Frontline, which I've seen before, but I realized they have these feature-length documentaries basically for free on YouTube, and they are very straightforward. They're not art films. They're just straight up like investigative documentaries, but they're so good. They go really in depth on subjects, and they're free because it's PBS. They're just free on YouTube. And they even share like the raw footage of their interviews. It's really cool. So their latest one is called the America's Great Divide, and it's like a 4-hour documentary series. It's like 2 parts on YouTube.
I've heard of this.
Both 2 hours. And it's amazing to me what they do, because they pump these out pretty frequently, but the work that must go into them is insane, because they really chart these big picture stories, starting from like, this one starts from the beginning of the Obama presidency till present day, and it charts just step by step, how we got to here, and what is going on, and like what the narratives are on all different sides. And they have a wide range of interviews, everybody from like Megyn Kelly to like Obama administration officials, and Steve Bannon, and it's amazing the access they got and the story they tell about just like America right now.
Whoa.
So just, I don't know much other material that's like doing that, and it's free. It's on YouTube, so check it out. Frontline on YouTube, lots of good stuff.
It's cool that they share the raw footage of interviews. I feel like that's something I've always wanted documentaries to do, is either that or like show me the time code of what, like, of the interviews, that I know when you're like cutting like sentences together.
And what's really cool about the raw footage is that it's not cutting back and forth to the interviewer. It's just on the subject, and it's just the raw footage on the subject, just that angle. Yeah. And you hear the questions being asked off camera, and they're like listening and reacting, and how they
That's cool.
respond.
That's
amazing.
It's
very cool.
Michael?
I recently saw 1917 with Alex. Alex and I went and saw it. And it's a really interesting movie, and I feel like I want everyone to go watch it and then come back and tell me what they think.
I'm seeing it tomorrow, so no spoilers, please.
Don't ruin it.
But you know the premise
I know
of how it's made. I'm bringing it up because we just talked about Children of Men and the idea of long takes, and I talked about, the idea that stitching them together sometimes bothers me. And I feel like this movie just reinforced that, where it was really distracting to me how they stitched it all together. And I walked out and I was like, I think that movie could have benefited from editing. Like, I think it would have been totally fine to have editing.
I know, I like that one cut.
Right. Exactly. That was my favorite part of the movie. So I don't know. But everyone that I've talked to really, really loves it. And so I think this is solidified that this is very much a me problem. And I'm probably one of like 10 people in the world that's watching, just waiting to see when they're stitching
You're like studying the frame to see where the connections are happening. Yeah.
But I really feel like it was less effective because of this like overcommitment to this thing. But again, I think it's a very specific me thing.
Well, but here's what I'll say about that movie is just, would it be a really good movie if it was just a normally edited movie? And I think the story would have just been fine. It would have just been an average movie. So I think what makes it stand out is just that choice. And that's not what should make a movie, which starts to, people use the word gimmick a little bit, you know?
I have not seen it, but I've seen some like, just videos that have been circulating about behind the scenes and how they created everything. And it looks mind-blowing. So
It's impressive.
So yeah,
it's so impressive.
If it were just like, even if some of those shots were 4 or 5 minutes long, which they are, like sort of the Children of Men length,
Mm-hmm.
even the work going into getting all of that stuff practically and the
It's
performances,
amazing.
like
Yeah.
I would
It's
assume
absolutely
it's incredible.
Right. I'm talking about the story. I'm saying, would the story be gripping and fascinating if
I will tell you after I see it
Tell me
tomorrow, Brian.
I kind of land in the middle where I think I'm kind of with Michael in the sense that it was a cool experiment to see a movie that tries to at least give the illusion of true continuity through the entire thing, except for one moment in the middle. But there were moments where I could feel like they were committed and they were in, and it had to be one take, and it had to feel like one take, and so there's no way to get around it. And it was like, well, they probably could have trimmed this part, and it probably would have been better if we didn't have to like sit in this truck and wait for them to get to the next place. So I was feeling that thing where in Children of Men, it's so effective to do those long takes because they're for a specific purpose in a specific sequence. And to do a whole movie that way just because it's like the Birdman thing. This is not the same as Birdman, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm that into it. I think I'd rather have like big chunks of a movie be long takes where it's like really appropriate, and then it's okay if it's not all a long take.
Let's circle back and discuss it later.
Yeah, sure.
What you were just saying, Trisha, I think is kind of the thing where what went into the making of it is extremely impressive. And that was another thought I was having walking out, was like, I wish I'd watched a 2-hour documentary about how they made the film. I think I would have enjoyed that more than the film they made. So, but again, I think it's a me thing.
Everybody I talk to is like,
loves it.
This movie's freaking amazing.
Yeah, so
they're blown away.
I want to hear what everyone thinks about all this. Let me know on Twitter. Cool.
Oh, they will.
Awesome. This has been our conversation about Logan. Let us know on Twitter any and all thoughts. We always love to hear from you. Thank you very much to all the patrons that support the show and make it possible. And we will see you all in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.